All right, friends, let's talk about the foreclosure process in Louisiana. So it's important to understand when it comes to foreclosures that they are set at the state level, and then they are carried out and executed at the parish level, right? So, and if you're in other states, you're welcome to listen to, but this is going to be very Louisiana specific. Now, we are a judicial foreclosure state. And so what does that mean? Judicial means it has to go through the courts. And so keep this in mind. Now, if you operate in other states, literally Mississippi, I operate there too. It is a non-judicial state. It does not go through the courts. It goes through the trustee sale. Very different. So understand that this varies by state. And then also your experience will vary. All right, so first and foremost, the goal of this is to be a general overview of the process, and then to give you some information, some resources as well. This is one, if you're listening to it, this is going to be one where I'm going to be showing some things on my screen as well, so keep that in mind. All right, so with that being said, I am going to Um, all right, I'm pulling these up. All right, so let's talk about what happens. So when someone gets behind, so if they are behind on their payments, understand this, they've got to be behind four consecutive missed payments, right? So not behind one and then they catch up, behind one, catch up, and then that four, no, four, they miss, January, February, March, April. That is the threshold for the lender to then take legal action. Okay. Now, this is for a traditional bank loan, by the way. I'm not speaking to, other types of things because that's different. Okay. But for a traditional bank loan, let's just say with Chase Bank, that someone has to miss their payments four times, and then Chase can then choose to start the foreclosure process. And that foreclosure process is it's a lawsuit. It is a lawsuit for the default on the mortgage, and it would allow them to ultimately seize the property. The bank's not taking anything back because the bank never had the property, right? And so this is the process for them to be able to seize the property, to be able to recoup their funds. Okay. So four consecutive payments that they've got to be behind. And then Chase would then hire an attorney. There's five big law firms that handle the majority of these foreclosures. There's always going to be like little one-offs that people will hire, but that's for the most part, there's five main attorneys that handle throughout the state. So they're going to hire an attorney, and that attorney is going to go to the courts, and they are going to, in essence, start the lawsuit there. And this is when in public record, it is going to show up generally as a notice of seizure. In I will say this, in Southeast Louisiana, it has generally showed up as a notice of seizure in the public record. And that notice of seizure, that is a notice stating that the lender is moving forward with the foreclosure process, and this is a notice that the house, you know, if the default is not cured, the house will be seized. Now, what's important here is to understand is this is when it is in the public record for the first time. And ultimately, there is going to be a level where um, this is where it becomes publicly known. Okay. And so keep in mind, if you're working with, um, if you're working with folks and facing foreclosure, things like that, this is one of the first things I say. I say, have you been served yet? Because once they hire an attorney, that attorney is then going to engage the sheriff's office, the local sheriff's office for where that property is located, the parish, right? They're going to engage them, hire them, and then they've got a checklist of things that they have to do. One of them is they have to serve every interested party in the property. They have to serve them with this notice of seizure. So not only is this every owner, so it could be husband and wife, it could be I mean, I've seen it where they serve the co-borrower and the two co-borrowers. I've seen it to where, so it could look like that. But then also they have to serve all the interested parties. For example, if there's a second lien, if there's property taxes that are delinquent, if there are, if there's an HOA lien, they're going to serve the HOA. anyone who has a legal interest in the property should be served as well. By the way, I didn't say this in the beginning. I'm not an attorney. I don't pretend to be one on YouTube, but this is something that I have taught at brokerages for years, and it is something that I've had at this point 4 or 5 different attorneys review, as well as one sheriff's office review um, my overview of the process. Now, granted, so they've hired the sheriff. The sheriff has to start going through this. And when we say serve, I'm literally they're going to have a deputy go to the residence. And if it is vacant, they will then tape it on the door. This is where you see that long legal notice on a door. If they're there, they will literally serve them. And so they're going to be looking for people, right, to serve them. And so they have to go through that process. So if in the process they find out, someone's deceased, that's going to delay the process. Like there's things that do make things more complicated. Okay. On top of that, if they notice that the not the sheriff, during this time the lender is they're they're working with the the borrower, and they're trying to stop this themselves. They're not going silent. They're consistently reaching out and saying, hey, here are some options of what you can do to get caught up. It might be a loan modification. It might be, hey, you're qualified for a short sale. It might be you're pre-approved for a deed in lieu, like stuff like that. At this point, once they hire the attorney and the sheriff, any fees that the lender incurs are going to be added to the borrower's default amount. So if they want to catch up their loan, they have to catch up both the legal fees, that includes the sheriff fees, right? Regardless if the foreclosure goes through or not, both the sheriff and the lawyer has to get paid. And so they've got to get paid. And so that can easily be a $3,000 to $5,000 chunk, depending on where they're at in the process. And so if they owe, 15 grand, they have to be prepared. It might become 20 grand that they owe. So especially because a lot of times people are scraping together to get caught up. That's really important. So the sheriff is going to, at this point, they're serving everyone, things like that. And the lender is actually sending a property preservation company out there. So for example, if the sheriff goes to serve them and say, hey, they were not at the residence is vacant, or they're going to send, if they've got any implication that the residence is vacant, they're going to have a property preservation company go and secure the property. The lender has the right to secure their interest. So with that being said, a property preservation company, they will literally, if the property is found to be vacant, they will literally change the locks and we'll put a lockbox on the property, and you would have to contact the attorney representing the lender, right? Don't be confused. It's that attorney is not representing the borrower, it's representing the lender, to get the the code to then access the house. So with that being said, they're moving the process along, they're checking off boxes. And it is important to understand that the owner owns the property all the way until the very end. Okay. And so there's going to be a foreclosure auction that happens at the courthouse. And it's important to understand that auction is open to the public and they have to advertise it. So let me actually show you some of my screens. So when I'm working with someone who's facing foreclosure, one of the very first things I do is go see, ask them, did they get served yet? And if it's yes, hey, are you aware of any foreclosure auction date yet? They may not know. And so then I'm going to go look them up. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. All right, so you should see here, I've got multiple of these. All right, let's start with St. Tammany Parish. So this is St. Tammany Parish. The sheriff's office is going to be the one that's handling the auction. And this is going to be, so if you see here, this is their public sale listing. I promise you, if you go on their regular site, they're hard to find, but you generally want to look up St. Tammany Parish, whatever your parish, foreclosure auction online list. So if you see here, you've got movables and real estate. Movables is stuff like mobile homes, cars, tractors, like actual stuff that's not houses and land. Real estate, this is going to be buildings, houses, buildings like commercial buildings. This is going to be just land, and this is going to be houses. All right. And the only reason a mobile home would be here is if it was tied in with some land. Okay. All right. So you've got the two differences, make sure, right? And then here, if you look, they have different statuses, right? Active, postponed, hold, on hold, bankrupt, canceled, sold, canceled, slash on hold, and no bid, no sale. And then you got the sheriff dates. In St. Tammany Parish, these happen like once or twice a month on Wednesdays in Covington at the courthouse. So for example, let's just pick April 16th. You search here, you'll see they've got a car somehow, like you can start to see here what's going on. It literally, it'll name, new res is Shell Point is foreclosing on this one. You see the people's name. So Dean Morris is one of, Herschel Adcock is one of the, let me show you the, some of the big foreclosing attorneys. So, Dean Morris, you got Herschel Adcock, Junior right here, Jackson McPherson. You can see that their name's pretty, Dean's obviously one of the biggest ones. And then there's a level that logs will do it pretty frequently too. Um, this is important. I will say that St. Tammany has the best site. So if you see here, they've got the case number, they've got the information. We go to house, and then you can see who's doing it, who are they, who's it against. This is the attorney representing the lender right here. Don't take this address in this house as face, take it as face value. They have gotten this wrong before, so you have to understand, you have to look at it from the legal address, not the municipal address. So the writ amount, don't be confused. This is not what you can buy the property for. This is like, for example, this is a very nice house. You're not going to get it for 54,000. It is going to be that is going to be the amount that they owed when they went into default. Okay. And then they have some terms and conditions for the sale, and then the current status of it, right? So one of the cool things about St. Tammany, if you click on it, you can see here, they actually, you can see if they have appraisal, would be here. And then you can see here the mortgage certificate, and it'll say stuff like, basically this is not a title search, but it's a cousin to it. It is not exhaustive. Okay. They are limited in what they look here. So you can see this is the description. So this is what you want to go off of, this legal description here. And then these are going to be some of the different things. So you see that notice of seizure. See, that's what was filed in the public record. So they just have a mortgage, the assignment of the mortgage, meaning someone else took over the mortgage. And then you've got, so they don't have any additional liens or judgments, but if they did, it would be there, but it does not, it's not exhaustive. So it's not going to say 100% of everything. All right. By the way, with St. Tammany Parish, you can subscribe and they'll email you, I think weekly or every other week. All right. So this one is for Tangipahoa Parish. I'll be honest, they're pretty new on having a site. So you can sign up for weekly email alerts here. Theirs is lackluster. I know this property, it does not include a lot of information, but you can see this is one pending. They don't have much information. And this is for the next one coming up on April 23rd. So they're now doing it, instead of weekly, they're going to monthly. So the fourth Wednesday of every month, that's Tangipahoa. This here is for Orleans Parish, right? And theirs, it's every Thursday, held every Thursday at 12 p.m. Orleans Parish Civil District Court. And you can see the real estate here. You can look up by the address, or you can see, what's scheduled. So if you look here, and you can go through again, you're not getting a property for, 1,000 amount. That might be, a percentage of what they're going. So if you look here, the status, so they have scheduled, you can see here, the city of New Orleans is handling this one. But nonetheless, you want to be able, so if you see here where it says stopped, that is no longer active, right? Going to the sale. People own the property all the way until the very last minute when the gavel drops saying sold, sold, sold to, this person right here for the bid. The owners own it all the way last minute. They can do things to the very last minute. Let me show you. This is Jefferson Parish. So you go to the latest here. And then if you see here, you can start to go through it. And then so here's the hard part when you work in multiple parishes. So then let me show you Livingston. So their site, it is, all their sites are generally different. I think Ascension was similar to Tangi's. They're using a third party. But let me be very clear. No, this one's similar to Orleans. So, but let me be very clear, they're all different. So if you work in multiple state parishes, then you're going to realize there's a difference. All right, so then the at this point then they own it still, right? But then there's a public auction. This is not only one way they're advertising it in the newspaper as well, things like that. And so at this point, going up to the auction date, if the owner doesn't stop it at the auction, you can bid. Buyer beware. If you are looking to buy at the auction, you need to understand. I'm not going to go into full detail, but understand this. It is not a normal buying situation. You do not get a normal deed. It's not a normal, you do not get a full, guaranteed of clear title. It is complex, and there are liens that can take the property back, even if you rehabbed it, but they would just reimburse you the purchase price. So 6 months, up to 6 months after the sale. There's things like that that you need to learn. Buying at an auction is not for the faint of heart. Biggest thing is buyer beware. You need to learn before you go bid. And so whoever wins at the auction, there's going to be two different types of folks who are going to be bidding. It is going to be third parties. So there's going to be investors or even civilians. I've seen sophisticated civilians buy their primary residence there. I do not recommend that, again, because it is very different than the normal process. You're not getting to do an inspection. Literally, if you bid, you buy. You cannot back out. Like, there's actual legal ramifications if you back out. So that's a third party civilian or investor, right? Then the other party is the lender is going to send someone to bid on their behalf, and if they prevail, that's how you get a bank owned property. And so that's the process, you guys. Understand this. It's nuanced. You know, each parish is different. My I have not worked with every parish, but my experience has been St. Tammany Parish has been the golden standard, and so a lot of the surrounding parishes has, tried to reflect that. So I hope this helps. I've been stopping foreclosures for 10 years in our area, and a lot has changed over the years. So you constantly want to stay informed. But this is an opportunity here. You want to learn how it is, whether you're looking to help people stop a foreclosure, if you're facing foreclosure yourself, or if you're wanting to buy foreclosures at the auction. You've got to continue to educate yourself so that you can make and take the best action possible. Appreciate you guys checking in. Appreciate you guys tuning in as always, and hope you guys have a great day.